Welcome to Freedom Fridays. This is the Freedom Doctor, your host. And today I have an amazing group of educators of Black children. Our guests today are the Dean of a local charter school, Dr. Osizwe Harwell. And we also have the amazing co-founders of the African Center Birmingham Homeschool Collective, the great Zsa'ssata, Shakur, and Bomani Williams. Y'all, thank you so much for being here. And I just want to jump in to ask a bit about your background. I want to ask, where are you from? What part of the country are you from? And how long have you been educating Black children?
Well, peace, everybody. I'm Bomani. My beautiful wife is Zsa'ssata. We are the co-founders of the Birmingham African-Centered Homeschool Collective. We've been educating for the last 8 years. We've been educating in a organized capacity maybe in the last 4 years, and we really amped it up when we moved to Birmingham. We're originally from California. That's where we met, and we've been in Alabama for the last 8 years, going on 8 years here. We've been in Birmingham for the last maybe going on 4 years. So this, we started our journey in California, and we grew together here down south where our roots are at, and we're now educators.
Yes, we repatriated back to the south. My roots are here in Birmingham, his are in Mobile, so we kind of, like I said, we came back to the south, came back home to teach the babies, and it's been great. We have 3 children of our own. Our daughter, Sunshine, she's 10. Zion, our middle son, is 8, and Zakeem, our youngest son, is 7. And we've been homeschooling them for the past, like I said, 8 years. And that has been great. It has been great to be able to be hands-on with their education and to be able to see what and to know what they are learning, and to be in control of that, not in a tyrannical type of way, but in a way where they know how to navigate through this society that has, totally failed us in so many ways. So it's good to just have control over that, because we didn't have that. Our parents weren't really knowledgeable of these type of things. So that has been great on its own.
Oh wow, West Coast to the dirty South representing. I'm Osizwe Harwell. I'm from Buffalo, New York, upstate New York, and born and raised. I claim Atlanta as my home since 1996. I'm HBCU bred. I've worked in Atlanta public schools and local surrounding areas and colleges for most of my life. I think I came to education when I was about 14, working at the local African Cultural Center in Buffalo as a summer camp counselor, and I've been doing it ever since. Like, even when I try to run away from education, it finds me. And so I know my call is to always be a part of a learning process and to make sure that the learning process for others is a powerful one. I was fortunate to go to African-centered schools as a child in pre-K and first grade, and to have parents much like you all that really grounded me. And that's something that I've always wanted to bring broadly to young Black and Brown children in all settings. And so I'm really excited that I get to be a school administrator now, and really to be able to impact teachers and scholars broadly, and just plant those seeds wherever I go. And so everywhere I go, I mentor in African Rites of Passage. I have a 4-year-old, almost 5-year-old genius named Zola, and he's super awesome and getting ready for kindergarten. And I certainly agree that you have to take ownership in curating your children's journey through education. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harwell. So talk to me, people. I want to start with Dr. Harwell. Dr. Harwell, you are the you are the C of African Center Education. You grew up in that. How would you say that? How would you say that education helped develop or heal your sense of self as a Black child?
Well, I think what was wonderful that I did not realize at the time is that I went to a place called St. Augustine's, and it was called African Child and Family Institute. Mm-hmm. We had two sites. We had one on Fillmore in Buffalo, New York. So I'm representing because I know my Buffalo folks are watching, and then on Grider, both on the east side of Buffalo. And what's so powerful is that my teachers, when I was 4 years old, you don't think 4 years old is a formative time in your life, or 7, but I remember those times. I remember my teachers, Mr. Boston, Miss Gray, Miss Jeannie. Like, I remember, I don't even know how I remember Miss Jeannie's name, but they loved me. They loved me. They loved me. And they loved me so much that when they would see my mother, once I moved to Atlanta, how's Raina doing? What's going on with her? How's she doing? I'm so proud. When I got my doctorate, Mr. Boston was there rooting me on. He's checked on me. He's found me through my life. This man that was my teacher, a male teacher at 4 years old, follows me and knows that I'm well, and I'm 42 years old. So that, I think, is grounding, that I was rooted with a broad community of mentors, in an extension of what my mother, my father, my aunts and uncles and grandmothers gave me. There were people that just always rooted for me. And that is what is so central for our children, and what I always want to be a part of is you got to have people rooting for you. So my son, he's in the public setting, but he's got to be in a place where people look like him and they are rooting for him. At least in the formative years, he's got to be somewhere where they think Black boys are brilliant, amazing, beautiful, powerful, and they tell him all day. And from birth, because I'm a working mom, he's been in childcare centers throughout the there's that mother love and that elder love, just all the way throughout, and that just kind of community investment in Black children.
Wow, that's really amazing. It sounds like your educators really impacted you in that African Center environment, and they were definitely committed to investing in that whole person. And like you said, have follow you throughout adulthood. I want to pitch the same question to you all, Zsa'ssata and Bomani. What has been the impact of African Center education on your life?
Well, as of now, which is funny, because I know, well, I'm gonna speak for myself, but us being from the West Coast, he's from Long Beach, I'm from Compton. Mm-hmm. We didn't have that. Like I said, we didn't have that African Center like hub, or at least we didn't know about it, and our parents didn't either if it was there. Right. But it was more, like I said, we were more so fighting the gang culture, like as early as elementary school in Southern California. Like really, like those are the things that you have to worry about, because you do have white, Black, Mexican, Samoan, there's so many of us mixed up that you can't really even focus on your Blackness. You don't even see it. You really don't see it around. But as far as like I'm concerned, or with my childhood, like my dad never really was like pro-Black, like, Black fist pro-Black, but he always was a proud Black man. Mm-hmm. He didn't necessarily have to like vocalize it out of his mouth, but he was always hardworking, instilled good values and morals into me and my brothers. He was a military man as well. So my grandfather was the same way. He taught him how to work on cars. My grandfather had a 3rd grade education. That's African centered now. I know that now that was African centered education. Yes. That my dad was getting and my uncles were getting, and all that stuff from my grandfather, who had a 3rd grade education and taught them how to raise whole families. So, we never, like I said, it wasn't quite vocalized to me, but I've always been proud of who I am. And that's always been a problem, sticking me somewhere where people don't look like me. Because I'm like, this ain't how the story go. You know what I mean? So that kind of was my issue with public school. Because like me and my husband just say, yeah, let's talk about Christopher Columbus, but what was he doing to my people at that time? I understand y'all think it was like this, but our people were going through something totally different. And so for our children now, it's like no matter where we put them, because they have been in public school at one point in their lives, but they're going to be comfortable and they're going to be confident in their self-worth, their blackness. They're going to be completely confident that whatever comes their way, they're going to have one in the chamber to fire off. You know what I'm saying? Up here, no matter where they go. So that's what it is for me, to know that their skin is beautiful, to know that your hair is beautiful, no matter what texture, the way you dress. I don't care how many colors you want to wear or how many colors you don't want to wear. All of that is beautiful. The way we count, the way we chant, the way we sing songs, tell stories, all of those things are making a staple in our children's lives, and this being embedded in their spirit so they can pass it on to generations. We hope. I'm hoping that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Yes, I really received that that part about, you know, coming up in a educational background that was not truly like African centered, but like coming from people who are proud of their blackness, like, you know, but believing in the Black community. And, you know, both of my parents actually are like really active community people, like looking after Black people's needs, making sure that people who don't have the resources have food, you know, have support, come from the same type of background. But it's interesting, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and I did not go to school with Samoans, white people, Latinos, you know, until like Latinos, until I got to middle school. In high school, like my education was like 99% Black. And what we had was like, we did Black things, but the education was not African centered. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect sense. Yeah.
I grew up memorizing the National Negro Anthem. You know, I knew that, you know, and when I got to college, I was like, okay, I know this tune. I got this. I went to Morehouse and a lot of functions we singing. I was like, I got this. I can harmonize. In fact, I got it so much. It's funny though, but I didn't realize until I got to college that I lacked the African centered education. I didn't know that my big history beyond enslavement. And Black history is more than enslavement, right? And I want to pivot on that point. Like, Black history is more than enslavement. Educating our children is more than about our collective history as being enslaved people, right? And I want to ask the whole panel, what does it mean for you, African-centered education? I'm gonna go back. How is African-centered education different from what most folks would get at a traditional, you know, educational background, like at a PWI or you know, a school district that's controlled by folks who are not grounded, I'll say it like that, in African-centered education? How's it different? Like, what are some of the ways that is different? Like, you know, like we have, for example, like culture. There are different cultural differences. There are different values, like Ubuntu. Like, you know,
we got you.
So how's that different? Like that you teach, or or the environment that you in? How do they offer something different than the status quo?
So from a couple different aspects, from the homeschool aspect, and there's the African-centered aspect. And just African-centered education differs from all other educations, right? Even if it's Black-centered education, you know, even sometimes HBCUs and colleges miss the mark on the African-centeredness, right? And when we say African-centeredness, we're talking about literally putting, coming from the Africa at the core, right? And when I say Africa, I'm not talking about the physical look. I'm not talking about the garb. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the principles. I'm talking about the proverbs. I'm talking about the, like you just named, Ubuntu, right? Yeah. I'm talking about Sankofa. I'm talking about reaching back to the things that made us great, right? The things that put us to the level of our greatest ancestors, right? These things are the things that got us through the great disaster, the Ma'afa, right? That got us through slavery. So African-centeredness also speaks to the whole child or the whole person, right? It's not a business. A lot of these schools are businesses. They just get children in, get children out. We're speaking to the whole child. We're learning this child. We're giving you a tribe, like the sisters, like Dr. Harwell said. She has a tribe that traveled with her through her whole life up until now, at least a person, right? And I'm pretty sure there's other people. So that's the African-centeredness. It's a love for that child, and it's rooted in African principles. Like I say, our proverbs and so on and so forth, our values, and just the historical knowledge that we get from the continent too. We had some of the greatest agriculturalists that comes from the continent. So again, just pulling all the things from the continent to make us great.
Because there's nothing we can't talk about that we can't start with us. I don't care if you talk about science, math, writing, it all come back to us anyway. So I think we have to be, like I said, we were born to be Africans. That's who we are. We can't escape it if we wanted to. I don't care if we live in London, Ghana, LA, we all have these same things that connect us. The way we dress, the way we talk, our slang, our hair, all of those things connect us back to Africa. All of those things. Public school, our children went to when we came down south, the schools were all Black. Love that. Love to see that. But they also, like you said, the teachers have to sign contracts as well. So they're kind of in a bind with things that they want to teach the children that they know that the children should know before they go to this next grade or before they go out there, but they cannot because they have signed contracts that said, I'm going to teach this, what you put in front of me to these children. At homeschool, especially African-centered wise, is different because first of all, we don't have to sit in the same room all day. We can go to the park, we can go on the porch, we can go to a field trip to Walmart if we want to. We can do, all of the parents have a skill. We know you have a skill. You come in and teach these children something. So they'll know that we're a village. Each person has to bring what they can, and they really can't do that in public school because everybody is trying to work, trying to survive, and also trying to get into these children what they can before they leave because they know it's really not enough. But they have to make it work. And where we come in is like we are so grateful that we could step away from our 9-to-5 jobs and be able to bring these babies in, to bring them into our home and to have their parents become a part of our village so they can teach our children as well. Because our children don't always want to learn from us. Trust me, we are the government to our children sometimes, and they need to learn from somebody else. So that's where the village and African-centeredness comes in. Sister, my daughter likes to write. You're a writer. I'm gonna send her over here to you. My son likes to do this. He's a little rambunctious. Let's send him over here to the martial artists, to our MMA friends over here. Every child is an individual. That's what public school doesn't let you do. Yeah. They don't let you be an individual. Everybody has to learn the same thing, learn it the same way. That's not how we have to do it, the way we do it. And it's been great. The children are flourishing. Their genius is awakening. Just like Amos Wilson said, they awakening the Black genius.
Come on now.
Yes.
Come on, Amos Wilson.
Yes. And I want to give him the credit because I think when we talk about genius awakening, people have reworked it, revisited it, reframed it, but that is Amos Wilson, right? And so it's so powerful that you all are just continuing this legacy, right? When I was coming up in Buffalo, New York, we had an African infusion project, and my mother, Dolores Bolden Milan, and Florence Flakes Rozier, rest in power, were mentored by Baba Asa Hilliard.
Oh,
Mentor, who then became my mentor when I moved to Atlanta and attended Georgia State and moved into the education system.
Wow.
Saying is so powerful because yes, our history is not just enslavement, but it's not just kings and queens either. As Bomani, it's about the character and the spirits and the ritual of our people. If we're talking about kings and queens, we're talking about our ancient mystery systems. How does that carry down to us, like our cultural byways? And I think Nzinga and Ndugu in the work of Baba Daniel Omatosho Black really practices that in real life and in community. And so I see African-centered education as a spectrum, right? You have that embedded cultural instruction that we get from our parents and our elders, as you described in your childhood with your uncle and your dad, and those ways that our elders just teach us and show us. My grandmother didn't know what African-centered education was, but we was in the garden in the backyard every day. I didn't go to daycare, that was mine, right? So I was fortunate, before, preschool to be with Grandma Flo, right? And to just get some of those lessons in those ways. And so there's the embedded part. And then there is the, we just love you and we're going to teach you this Black anthem and we're going to add it and be additive. Mm-hmm. There's also the intentional and explicit, which you all are doing in your homeschool collective, which says, baby, I'm going to lift you and name you. When I was a classroom teacher, my babies loved to on the desk. So make me a beat, and then I need you to say, I am intelligent, excellent, and successful. I'm intelligent and successful. Forget your IEP. I am intelligent, excellent, and successful. When I was a young teacher, we started every day with, I am an African genius. I am not a servant, a slave, or an employee. And it went on, right? And it talked about, I'm a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, a healer, a speaker, an author, a writer. I am, all these things. That is the core of African-centered education, as Baba Hilliard and all of our foremothers and fathers will say, is naming who we are as African people. Beyonce did it. She wasn't the first one in Black history, but naming who we are as African people and rooting our children in that understanding so they can take it wherever they go. Speak that life into them.
Yes, that is so powerful, Dr. Harwell. And that's healing our Black our children's sense of self. Black children often come to these schooling systems, and their sense of self is not affirmed. It's and they have all these societal messages that's telling them they're not a healer. They can't be a scientist. In fact, that they're a criminal, right? Because I even heard that in my all Black system. One time I was in an altercation with another student who was picking on me, and hypermasculinity, I was taught to fight back, and when people push me, and I got labeled as a thug, and that is something that I remember to this day. I don't identify as that, and I'm glad I had other teachers to counter that. But everything that you just said made me think about how it's so imperative to contribute to our children's sense of self, right? And with that, I really want to harken back into on what Dr. Harwell was talking about. Dr. Harwell said, for students, it doesn't matter what your IEP was. When I was a tutor at this IB focus school in Atlanta, I had a student who was had an IEP, and with that carried a stigma, and his teacher labeled him as somebody who didn't have the capacity, right? And I felt like my role in his life was to speak to his capacity, to speak to his brilliance, even if his environment was telling him that he could not be those things. So I really want to ground the next question into that circumstance. What do you see as the deficits of the status quo system itself? From whether we're talking about society, there are the societal messages that are children here, when they're not in any education, or the education system itself, what deficit messages are our children hearing? Like, what are our children, in your opinion, hearing affirmative messages? I'll just ask that broad question so it makes sense what I'm trying to ask you. Are our children hearing affirmative messages about who they are and what they and who they are and what they can be and do?
Okay, so we've been reading Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Jordan Bury, and she talks about our healing and the next step of our healing, but this also applies to our liberation in our future. She talks about self-esteem, right? And she talks about what self-esteem is and where it comes from, and it comes from your worth, right? So, and then we talk about how this society has made sure that we feel worthless, right? Or our only worth comes from being a servant to somebody else, right? Getting a nice 9 to 5, a nice cushiony job with some benefits, so on and so forth, and we find worth in that. So no, I don't think our society, I don't think our society as a whole has put worth into our little Black children. Even when we were children, we got that worth from that auntie, that uncle, that special teacher, Big Mama, right? That's where we got our worth from. That's where we got our self-esteem from. And once our worth is high, once our self-esteem is high, we function at a different capacity. You know what I'm saying, on a whole nother level. So no, the answer to that is no. Society has done a horrible job at creating self-esteem to our youth, and that's one thing that we have to speak to so we can heal, so we can get free.
And it's funny you said that, because I think, we've been talking about this particular thing a lot, especially as it relates to children, because to relate to children, you kind of got to find your inner child, which is a great thing though, because they bring that out of you. And I think that a lot of us adults are walking around broken little children, and we don't even know how to, we don't even know how to heal ourselves, first of all. And then you have this fragile little Black child in front of you, and you kind of like see yourself in this fragile little Black child, and you like, I don't know how to help you, because that you inside of me too. You know what I mean? So we that's a rough battle, but at the same time, we are aware, especially as 80s babies, like coming out of the crack era, they counted us out the game. Like they just knew we were going to be doing something totally different than being on this Zoom talking about African-centered education for our children.
Right.
So we that are aware of this, and it's a lot of us, especially in our 30s and early 30s, mid 30s, that are like, our children, if we don't even have children, our younger generation has to have different than we have. We know the system failed us. We know this for a fact. So our thing is to have our children not relearn anything. We had to learn, unlearn, relearn. We just want them to learn it from jump.
First time.
First time. It saves a lot of time, a lot of mental stress. So that's our goal. And we just didn't see that happening for our children and the children we know in the typical public school setting. Because most of the children in the South, luckily, a lot of these teachers are Black. That's great. But a lot of places in the United States, they're not. A lot of these are white female teachers, and our Black boys at that point anything they do, they're being reprimanded for it. And that starts at an early age, because they look grown at 10 to these people. So they treat them like grown men. So that's, I think, where the breakdown comes from in the public school system. It's just them not knowing us as a culture. And that's always going to be, and I don't care if it's healthcare, education, all of those things. It's a breakdown with us and everybody else, because we're different. We move different, we live different, we talk, walk, all that stuff different. And we just got to get back to self. And those of us who know better, we all got to connect. We all got to link up and figure this thing out. we got to find each other and kind of propel this thing forward.
Y'all got me so excited over here. Like, I'm so Like I'm our biggest fans now. Like I think it's just so phenomenal. And I think I definitely agree that worth piece, that worth and value, you keep saying it because it's so essential. I think that that public education falls short of that. That I think just kind of having this like 20 plus year career, one of the things that we have had to navigate is finding the children and meeting them where they're at. If they don't have access to a liberating education, that is why the South is so powerful, because you have Black and brown teachers. So I grew up after those early experiences. Once I got to public school, most of my teachers were white. I was fortunate to be like in mixed schools, but it was still predominantly white. Once you wanted rigor or once you wanted access, in college readiness, you left the community, right? And you left. And so coming to the South gave us at least a starting point where the teachers look like us, but it requires more. So I do think, Balaji, Freedom Doctor, that the application is there because there's this shift to like socio-emotional learning, the work of Lisa Delpit and Gloria Ladson-Billings, and these folks who are teaching public school educators how to be culturally relevant.
Beverly got
to do, just to do the work that's not poverty-stricken children, or teaching approaches to our disenfranchised communities who still have power, who still have worth, who still have value. So I think that there is an improvement, and I think there is a trajectory, but there is something different when you explicitly say you are valuable, you are worthy, and you are African in all of what you bring. I think for a system, a public setting, to name and say that and practice it, that's transformative, and that's where we have to go. So I think the progress that we've made is nice. I think it gets more to those who don't get access to independent African schools, and where there are Black teachers, you have more potential for that liberation, which is the beauty of Black teachers. What's the book, Black Teachers on Teaching? Michelle Foster. So you get that where we are, but it's so much broader when you're in an independent setting and you can frame it the way you want to frame it.
Right. One thing that we learned that got us on this journey was when our little girl was in kindergarten. We had the capacity to volunteer all the time, and her spirit is the type of spirit that would thrive well in a classroom setting, which is why we went ahead and let her go to kindergarten. But we were there almost every day. We decided to keep her in there because we can affect more children than just our own. So we were there every day. We were helping all the children out. We gave that teacher that year some peace, right? From the 20 plus kindergartners that were running around, especially they got a test on the computer. They were testing every day. It was so standardized, we just offered a little bit of a relief in an African, and this is before we went all the way African centered, but in an African centered way, because we were those little children, uncles and aunties when we pulled up, and they used to run up to us in the community out of nowhere trying to give us hugs and stuff like that, because they did love us for what we did for them in those settings. I just wanted to add that. And also too, a part of our journey is we just created the African Centered Educational Services LLC, which we're African Centered Education Consultants. So one of our goals eventually, when we have the capacity, because we're super busy right now, is to get into the public schools and to be able to help facilitate interactions in an African-centered way, from student to teacher, teacher to student.
Kwanzaa.
So incorporating our African-centered holidays into the schools and stuff like that. So that is one of our dreams, to be able to get into these public schools here in Birmingham and just help facilitate a more African-centered education for them in their curriculums.
Yes, and to teach those our ancestors and people outside of the box, outside of the ones we already know. Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, we love them, don't get us wrong, but we need to, like we said, the Amos Wilsons, Dr. Chris Wilsons, our children need to start calling them names and getting on a broader spectrum of who we are and what these people, I mean, and especially the ones that believe in the Black child, like they know you are geniuses. They knew this way back when, before you even born, before you even created. They thought this about you. And that's the space we need to come from with them. They were thinking about you way before you even created. Yes. They wrote this book for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were doing a study in my community of just the entire history of African people. Like, if you're going to transform Black people, you got to know that history. And my PhD is in Africana studies, so I kind of had a little advantage, but it feeds me just to always go through it. And so he was sharing, Dr. Omatosho Black was sharing about Shirley Chisholm and how she ran for the Democratic ticket for president, and was the first Black woman to do so. And what was so amazing is she was a teacher. So I worked today and I shared with my staff, like, the teachers have this power. But what she said, sister, that was also powerful is, I'm not running to win. I'm running so that the next person can come along. And here we are. They're clearing the way. The ancestors are clearing the way for us. And when we name them and remember that, you know, the sky is the limit, right?
Absolutely.
For something to come.
Absolutely. It's so funny you mentioned Shirley. Miss Shirley Chisholm. Our daughter did her for her project in what? First grade, and she did Nina Simone in pre-K.
You got to know your people. You got to know your people. You got to know. You got to know who's with you when you're trying to accomplish things.
Yes. Right. Yes.
Right here.
Yes. Right. Yes. And they can't feed you. Right, we don't feed them. Mm-hmm. Ashe.
Yes. Ashe. So I wanna pivot from this lovely discussion point to talk about, or to ask you all about. So in this pandemic, things have had to shift how we educate our children, right? How we educate Black children, and the online space is becoming essential. You know, as you know, we're not all vaccinated. You know, some households choose to get the vaccination, other households don't, for whatever personal reason. And the online space is becoming more important. What are your thoughts on the opportunities that that this change provides for educating our children? Like now, you know, since we're online, you know, we can meet more people. What's the role of, like, the world school or the online space in Black education? Like, what are some new things? Well, I want to say African-centered education. What are some new things that you see that are working for the education of our children, specifically as it relates to, like, building that sense of self and identity in Black children?
Well, I'm excited because, well, I hate that COVID happened. Let me say that first. But I'm excited because everybody is homeschooling now. Yay! So we win one. Okay. But with that being said, especially with COVID, just Zoom alone, the world got to know Zoom really well when COVID happened because everybody had to go to it. What we did was, you know, once we were out of school, we did do some classes over Zoom. So this was a great platform for us to kind of get our feet wet as far as the internet and getting online, the e-learning was concerned. So we were able to do some sessions here on Zoom. Also, we use Kamali Academy, which is an African-centered curriculum from pre-K to 8th grade. And he has it broken down 36 weeks. Each day there's an original person to learn. Every day there's a science, math, all of these things, counting with the cowrie shells. It's very African-centered and to the T. And we've been doing that for the past, two years now. We've been using that, and it's been great. It speaks to our African children for sure. But as far as the online learning, it's connecting us. Like I said, this right here, a lot of people are using it. This is the platform to use to connect classes, to connect teachers, to do private tutoring sessions, all of those things. And if there are any that y'all know of, please drop them in the chat or something like that, because we're always looking to make things run a little more smoothly, looking for more African-centered curriculums from our little babies. We have them from 1 year old to 14. So we're always looking to find new forms of education and ways to go about that.
So I'm gonna add from two different perspectives. From the homeschool perspective, yes, it's been great because every parent now realizes that whether your child is in a public school setting or not, you are a homeschool parent, right? So even if we've always been homeschool parents. As soon as our child was born, you're homeschooling, you're a homeschool parent, and that's what we tell parents. That's how we politicize them with that. So yes, it's been wonderful to be able to get calls from parents saying, how do I do this better, or how can I help my child out more while they're doing their at-home studies and they have their teachers at school. They're still in a public school setting, but now you have to be more intimate with your child with their work. And it can be a good or positive thing. It has been good and positive in a lot of cases. So from a homeschool perspective, it's been great. We've got way more parents on board with the idea of that they're homeschool parents no matter what, and that you ought to spend time with your children educational wise outside of even the school setting. From the African Center perspective, it's a little bit tricky, right? Because a lot of African centeredness has to do with coming together. It has to do with coming to sing songs together. It has to do with touching. Healing, it has to do with healing. So it's hard for us to get that African centeredness through a Zoom call, right? We can get the African education part, right? We can do history all day on a Zoom, or we can do math. We can learn on Zoom or on an online setting, but it's hard to sing together, right? It's hard to play the drums together on an online setting. So there's something anti about this technology when it comes to doing the African centeredness in a full way. Right now, the educational part, we can talk all day and pass back and forth and read together, hear stories together, so on and so forth. But it's just, playing the drums, chanting, hearing those proverbs, the touching, the telling the stories, the sitting at the feet of the elders. Those things you can't do with on online spaces. So we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to balance it. That's why we love being a homeschool African-centered parents. So we're allowed to scientifically test things and see how it works. But I yield there. That's my opinion.
Yeah, we tried playing music on Zoom. It's like one person has to mute, and then you're like, okay, now you play now. And if you're gonna unmute, yeah, that didn't work. That didn't work out.
They need to figure that out. They need to figure that out. Dr.
That sense of like ritual and intimacy, community and connectedness is definitely very, very much one of our greatest loss in the pandemic. And I think equally though, I think we get to see the true genius of our children, right? Because from 3 to 4 to 14, those babies can do a Flipgrid, a Canva. They can tell you you're not on mute and your mic is off. They can get to the YouTube. They can do all these things and capacities that are far above the minimum standards of
right.
And so one of my leaders said, maybe we were doing this wrong. Maybe we was doing school wrong. Yeah. We were, right? Because what their capacity is, to be in the safety of their own home. I've got teachers who are like cooking in the kitchen and doing the things y'all described, which makes, learning pop. So I've had to teach teachers how to create connection and how to create intimacy, how to dab if you, get them woken up on the screen. Be creative. Tap into your genius, but our baby's genius is elevated in this time. And, there is, the kind of polarizing piece of access, right? So, we are supporting scholars who may not have access to technology, who may not have, somebody at home in the house. So we provide additional support, like if parents are working or parents need resources to make it as meaningful for all scholars. But truthfully, like our kids are showing us that we can do what you put in front of us and we can exceed. Teachers are sweating trying to figure out this technology and the kids made a movie.
They got it
in a virtual classroom, in a virtual locker, in a Bitmoji. They killing it, and I'm just watching graders maneuver breakout rooms and annotations, and I'm like, baby, you 12. I mean, you 10. You know, and so. What my job is, I call myself the queen of a good day because I support SEL. I also support discipline and those ones who are often with the highest needs in terms of behavior, get put out of class, get suspended, those kinds of things. And those babies are having no issues at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're winning bikes and gaming chairs and high performing because the distraction is absent and the support and structure is different in their home, right? So we're seeing people that maybe have behavior challenges or challenged us as adults. No issue at all. I've written no suspensions in literally 365 days.
Okay.
That's great.
No hearings. I've done no in-school suspensions. I've done no detentions. But the children are the same.
Right.
Okay. Well, you didn't log into your classroom. That's the biggest difference, which means they were amazing and powerful to begin with. And look, now we get to see.
Exactly.
It's a mirror. It's a powerful mirror.
I think it's been showing. I think it's been showing that the schools needed to catch up with our youth, right? With our young warrior scholars. And I think that even now it's going to expose, because a lot of schools or a lot of these districts are trying to catch up to the students now, but the students, like she said, they're going to surpass all this. This is not going to bore them in a minute. That's what it was. A lot of students was bored. Like, oh man, I'm bored. Y'all not even challenging me. And now they're challenged. Now they're interested. Now they're connected. So we're going to have to keep up with them, especially in the public schools. We're going to have to keep up with them now. And there is no going back. There is no going back to school with no laptop. All students should have a laptop. You know, there is no going back to the old way of teaching. Or if it is, then we should rebel against it. You know, there should be no going back.
We need to be very careful in this transition back to in-person and hybrid models because we've learned some things.
Yes.
And our children are super. I mean, even our three went to early Head Start in the beginning. And once they got to pre-K, kindergarten even, they had like 3 or 4 years of education, especially over the children who were just going to a school setting for the very first time. So they were zooming through stuff, and it was particularly the young Black boys that year that our middle child, when he was in kindergarten, all of those young Black boys were killing it.
And we can knock out this instruction in half the time that we was taking because you're slow anyway, and I was bored. So now
it's true.
We've knocked out all this cut the instructional time by half or 30% or whatever. And they're excelling, right?
And we're asking them to do things, and I realized this once I took child development and all that good stuff, that we're asking children to do things that adults can't do. We can't get an adult to sit down for 3 hours, 4 hours in a spot. Exactly, in one spot. And no, that's impossible. And our children learn on so many different levels that it's not even funny. We can learn from so many different methods, so many different people. And it'd be one specific thing and 10 children, and they learn it 10 different ways, but it's all the same, embedded in the same principles. So that's what we need to learn to tap into. And like you said, teach our public school teachers how to tap into our children better and to tap into themselves better. A lot of them don't know themselves. They just went through this go to school, go to college, get a good job thing too. They need to know themselves in order to teach the children who they are as well.
That's the thing right there.
And that's a great pivot point. So Dr. Harwell mentioned SEL, and that stands for social emotional learning, correct?
Yes, that's the new thing. Yeah.
I've been learning from teachers in our community, Dr. Harwell, like what that means. Because I'm trying to bring that to like what I'll do in the future in like collegiate education, like everybody can benefit from social emotional learning instruction, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as it relates to SEL, what would you say to parents or future parents of African children, right? As it relates to preparing an environment for their African children to learn. Like, what encouragement would you give to a current parent or a future parent of African children in preparing a safe space for them to learn in this African-centered way?
I think there are two things that I would want to just kind of wrap with. And one, in terms of safe space for African children, for our Black children, our babies. And I'm so glad to be in the company of those who are unapologetically African. Responsibility to curate the safe space, period, point blank.
Mm-hmm.
That's all on you, right? Know who's keeping them, who's watching them, who's engaging what they're saying. Ask for help. Take your cousin, your neighbor in there if you got to work. Get in those schools if your children are in public settings. If they're not in public settings and are private or independent, you curate the safe space and experience for your child. Don't find it, don't shop for it. Co-create it, because that's the only way that you will ensure. That's the only way. If we don't get all our babies in African-centered schools, we can have Saturday schools like other cultures and communities. Programs. We can get to our babies with our genius and our creativity, but you curate the consciousness and the safety for your child. It's not going to happen waiting for others to do it. So that's what I'm just saying as a mama. I'm a mama, and that's just who I'm going to be. So doing it as a professional versus now doing it as a parent, it's on me. And I've always known that. That's the only way you're going to ensure that it's safe is if you curate and co-create it with the team of educators that you're working with. Don't leave it. Take somebody with you. You ain't got to have no degree to go in that school. Take your whoever, so they will listen to you. Second thing is the shift in my journey in my work has gone to African American mental health and wellness. And my book, This Woman's Work, talks about B.B. Moore Campbell's work on mental health in Black communities. And as Zsa'ssata said, Zsa'ssata said, in terms of looking at the adults, when you're not healed and whole, you can't create wholeness in children. Social-emotional learning calls us to the table to be aware of ourselves. And in my journey of looking just at 40, in my 40s, to be looking at my childhood and the impact and the traumas and the transformation that comes, what I would say is, even as we pour in an effort and affirm our children, we're living in a world that says you're not enough. Countering this narrative, it's just a human thing, American thing that says you're not enough, you don't have enough, you didn't do good enough. And as we're affirming, give our children healing tools, whether it's clinical counseling, whether it's ritual, whether it's spirituality. Give them the tools that allow them the opportunity to heal the damage that our society creates or their experience might create as we build them. So I want us to be healing and restoring as we also affirm and lift, because I think that piece gets missing, and then our children become adults with wounds that they're not healing until way down the line. And so to be an adult and to still wonder, am I enough?
Yes.
Means that there was some opportunities, even with all of the affirmation, to say, oh, we got to uproot that part that told you you weren't enough. We got to uproot that part through counseling, clearing, spirituality, ritual, whatever it takes. We've got to do the healing and purging of the negative impact of the society that we live in. So those would be my two things.
Thank you. And I think we lost, okay. I think we lost our other guest, but that's okay because we're wrapping up.
I hope they get back on.
It's okay. So we just got four minutes. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Harwell, because as a future parent, I've actually been thinking about my future children and even having dreams and readings, right? Where I'm somebody who children, and most of my readings will pop up. Most of my spiritual people have prophesied children to me all my life. You don't know that about me, but that's
I feel it.
And I'm like, that's my side eye face for the visually impaired people. Um, and so you're saying then it's imperative to start early and be involved in the child's education, and possibly even before then to plan and work through your own healing, right? Work through your own stuff. So
Yeah, but I'm also saying specifically like healing. So like I work at a school that actually provides like clinical mental health counseling on site, right?
Okay.
My students to ATL psychology. I know you had Dr. Bell on here not too long ago. So there are some things that we go through just in the society that we're in, whether it's early trauma, whether it's abuse, whether it's poverty, disenfranchisement, whatever those things, our children are going through these things, and we have to give them the clinical tools and the healing tools. Because the truth is the messaging is going to presence itself even as we affirm and elevate our children. And so when they do, we've got to give them the tools to really just heal and release that. They know we love them. I knew I was loved, right? But I didn't necessarily know what to do with the messages that said, you still ain't good enough as a Black girl. You still hard enough as a woman. You still, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Your list of accomplishments still don't make, you whatever. How in the world could you doubt yourself in that way? Because it's just something I needed to uproot, because when I was 3 or 4, somebody said it to me. I was shaping my consciousness because it harmed me when I was, in a formative stage, and it sat in my spirit, but not necessarily in the front of my mind. So I was like, where is that coming from? Why don't you feel safe or sure in childhood? And I think this is why I got into child development, because really from 0 to 3 and 0 to 4, there's so many things that really happen that shape who we are. You don't even remember it.
That's so good. That's so good.
So we can do really good by our children by really getting them aligned with healing processes before they're adults. And then that way the affirmation sits and settles and they flourish. And it's just awesome. That's what I meant. And you're going to be an awesome, awesome parent.
Thank you. I received that. I'm turning 30 in 2 weeks. So I won't say out of nowhere, because this is something that has been on my mind, but it has exploded in my conscious. I guess I'm having a male version of baby fever. I researched this. It's a thing.
Baby fever is not a male version. It's just baby fever.
Right.
There's no male version. It's just baby fever.
I show. I'm experiencing baby fever.
Claim it.
So
brothers have it. I don't know if there's some people who are right with you that have baby fever.
Right.
Yes, we all have it.
I say, and I received it. Any last words for the listeners or the people who listen to this in the future?
Any last words? Just reminding myself, reminding you, reminding all of us that you are love, you are power, you are healed, you are whole. We all hold the capacity to heal and be free. And so it's such a blessing to just be joining you tonight in creating freedom. That's what we're here to do. There's no limit to what we can create. We have it. We have every single thing we need to be healed and whole and live powerful, wonderful, joyful lives. That's what I would say.
I say we have everything we need to live.
And tell your kids that. Tell it to the children.
I say we have everything we need to live powerful and joyful lives. This was Dr. Osizwe Harwell and our guests, Zsa'ssata, Shakur, and Bomani Williams. They had some technical difficulties, but I want to thank all of you for coming on the Freedom Friday with the Freedom Doctor, Roman Johnson. And just giving up your time to talk about healing our children's sense of self. Black children are so precious, so valuable. And I'm so happy they have you. So for my audience who are listening, thank you for tuning in to this installment of Freedom Friday. Let's get free, y'all. Peace.
Yeah.